Hello and welcome to this little update video on the state of affairs of our Paradox campaign with me, Grey Hunter. So, at the end of our Crusader Kings 2 campaign, I exported the game and I said that I was going to eventually continue it in EU4, and hopefully then, when we finished EU4, I would continue it in Victoria 2, and maybe, if I was feeling really saucy, I'd continue on to Hearts of Iron 3. Now, I was waiting because, as I said at the end of the Crusader Kings 2 game, I did want to take a little bit of a break from really long campaigns and having multiple games that would take ages and ages going on at the same time. So I haven't touched this for a while. In the meantime, The Art of War was announced and came out, and as you can see, I have it. Where is it? It's Wealth of Nations, Res Publica, Conquest. There it is, The Art of War. Okay, so they released The Art of War, which added a ton of extra provinces to the game, which was a slight problem because the conversion that I had was fairly old. So I had to manually convert a few places over to the Roman Empire. So we'll actually just load up the game, just so I could show you. So there's a lot of armies and such that are in our territory that shouldn't be. So we've got Moroccan armies, we've got Temclan armies, we've even got some Mamluks, I believe. Yeah, there they are. And we've got some... I don't know what you are. It looks like Israel, but Israel's not a thing. Karaman, apparently. So, I had to fiddle about a bit with who owned what province and all that sort of stuff. So I had to use console commands to give provinces to people, etc, etc. So I was able to give all the provinces that should belong to us. I was able to give all the provinces that should belong to the Arlees, all the provinces that should belong to the Timurids, etc, etc. So I prettied up everybody's borders back to what they were using the power of windowed mode and having both Crusader Kings 2 and this open at the same time. So we were able to do all of that. All good. I also found that there is now... I haven't played in a while. Oh, it turned it off. There's an option to have the provinces relate to your culture. They use dynamic names. I think I'll have to go do it again. But you can play the game with a lot more fun features in it now. So I'm looking forward to playing through. But there is a slight problem with this, and that is that Rome is redonkulously big. Now, I've given extra money to the Timurids, I've given extra... and I'll go over the changes that I made in a moment. I've given extra money to the Timurids, I've given extra money to the Volga Bulgarians, I've made sure that everybody's, you know, got some stuff to go with them. Okay, that's weird. It says it here as that they are. Okay, I'm just gonna change this again. No, not players. Damn it, AI hard. Lucky nations. Can I pick? No. Okay, well, no lucky nations then. No terra incognita. Use dynamic province names. Yes. Okay. Right, now we can see the state of the world as well. Excellent. Perfect. So, I fixed up the borders so everybody had what they were supposed to have. I left Africa a little bit different to what it was at the end of the game, mainly because these guys all end up, because I have played through this conversion a little bit on observe mode, and these guys usually end up eating each other, and they've produced some really cool dynamics every once in a while, which is nice. I left these provinces to their original owners because there's actually a way for them to expand southwards now, so being locked in here just means that one of these guys will take over the others, and then they'll be able to go southwards, and there'll be somebody in Africa when we convert over to EU... we're in EU4. When we convert over to Victoria 2. Which should be good. I haven't really changed anything in regards to the new countries, but there are so many new countries that it's really good. I've played through on observer mode, as I said, and these countries having more provinces and there being more countries in general makes for a much more enjoyable game. The AI playing as the Roman Empire switched over to France because the French culture is their main culture, so they obviously decided France was what they had to be. And they were actually rather passive. It's nice, because despite the fact that we are massive, there isn't actually that much of a power shift in our favor. These two fight it out. Poland fights it out with Volga Bulgaria, and one of these three ends up kicking the crap out of the other, and they become our main threat. And if you roleplay it like I intend to, where we won't be actively attacking all that much except in defense of our allies, etc., then you will find that the dynamic is very, very interesting. And I played the Observer game through to 1821, and that world would have looked amazing. It's outdated now, unfortunately, because it was in the previous version, but a unified China missing only a few bits to a unified Japan, because Japan did come and take Beijing. I'm not sure why they wanted Beijing, but they wanted Beijing. And it made for an interesting looking conversion, especially with the colonies. And now, because there are more nations over here, like the Cherokee were there originally, I do believe, but there's a few, like the Caddo, and I think the Osage were... I'm probably butchering that, but I'm pretty sure that a few of these weren't in the previous version of the game. The Iroquois always end up taking up a lot of the available land up here, and it's very interesting to see how you do with colonies. The Aztecs are now in their historical position, where they didn't actually forge their empire until a little bit before Cortez actually got there, so it's nice that the Aztecs aren't going to be om-nom-nomming everything up here. There's a lot more of the tribal sort of dynamic to EU4 in the Americas, which is nice, because you will generally find that in the previous versions you were able to just come over, beat the Aztecs in one war, and boom, you're dominant in the entire area. Whereas if you kind of roleplay it like I plan to, we'll be exploring a little bit, but we won't be exploring for the sake of... like, we won't be rushing colonization. We'll be trying to roleplay a little bit to make the game more interesting and fun, and hopefully when we get to the end of the game we'll have some nice colonial nations, because I plan to release them, with the exception of a colonial Australia, if we get it. If there is a colonial Australia, that is firmly staying in Roman hands. But the colonies in the Americas will be released, so hopefully if we play through to Victoria 2, there will be a new dynamic of power, and if we play through to 1936 and then go to Hearts of Iron 3, there'll be an interesting sort of dynamic, so that these guys might be the allied powers, we'll be kind of neutral, and someone over in the east is going to be a powerhouse, and it should be fun. I'm looking forward to it. I love Victoria 2, I love EU4, and I love Crusader Kings 2, so a Paradox Mega Campaign is a thing that I want to do. I want to see it done. So the changes that I've made to Rome, because most of the other countries didn't really need changes. The Timurids have their own idea group. The Volga Bulgarians don't. If you guys have any ideas about what I should put in for Volga Bulgaria, feel free to tell me, and I will mod their national ideas so that they have better ones, because they've got the generic ones at the moment, because Volga Bulgaria doesn't count as a conversion nation. So that's not the greatest of things. The Ali, I think, have their own... yeah, they get the Mamluk ideas, which I like. That's a good idea, that they should be having that sort of stuff. It makes it a good little country down here. It could become a trade empire if they wanted to. They could quite easily establish dominance in Africa. It should be an interesting game. But the Volga Bulgarians don't have their own national idea group, so if you have plans if you have any ideas about what I could do to make them cooler, feel free to let me know. Now, on to the Roman Empire. So, the Roman Empire conversion didn't work so great. It converted our provinces fantastically, but it didn't recognize that we were not actually French. So it gave us all French ideas, and I had to mod the French ideas over to what the Roman ideas were. It shouldn't matter, because there is no France in the game, so it shouldn't cause any crashes or anything like that. So I did change one of the ideas. Actually, no, I changed two. I made a note about what I did, didn't I? I changed the Roman legions. So the Roman legions used to be a land force limits, but we already have massive land force limits. Where is it? There it is. And considering that the land force limit modifier was plus 33%, so a third again, it made Rome even more of a power than it needed to be. So what I changed it to was a modifier for infantry combat ability plus 10%. So I basically took Prussia's ideas and I went, okay, that's not too bad. So we took Prussia's infantry combat ability bonus. So it's not quite as overpowered, and I probably won't be focusing on military idea groups, so it's probably not going to be a massively big deal. It's just going to be an interesting little side thing. But I also changed imperial bureaucracy, because imperial bureaucracy used to be you would get a increase to production, and with an empire this large, you'll be swimming in money already. You don't need more money. And it's a little bit overpowering to have that much money. So what I changed it to was an adaptation of England's ambition achieve, I think it's England's, where they get a slight advantage to accepted culture threshold. And I thought that would make sense because the imperial bureaucracy would have been more about gelling the empire together than production. I mean, if you've got a massive empire like this, you will have... Can we get culture in this? No. Okay, well, German is an accepted culture in the Roman Empire because of how many German provinces we had. There's a lot of Mongol provinces as well, especially in this area. There's some Greek, but mostly Norman, and I figured that there would be a lot of conflict between culture groups, so if there was an imperial bureaucracy, it would be more focused on making sure that everyone got along a little bit better. That's just my thought on it, but again, if you've got ideas about what I should change these to, because those were the only two ideas I changed, the rest of them make sense. And they're not... Yeah, none of them are overpowered, I don't think. Pax Romana I might change, but National Unrest -1 isn't that bad. Because it just means that your realm will be a little bit less prone to rebellion, which all nations will generally get at some point anyway. They'll all receive, at some stage, a bonus to national revolt risk, where they'll lose some. So I don't think that's particularly overpowered. But again, if you guys have ideas about what I should put in for the Roman ideas, I'm happy to hear them. Now, there is a slight problem with overlap between Crusader Kings 2 and EU4, because Crusader Kings 2 finishes in 1453, and this game begins in 1444. I can't change the start date on this, as far as I know. Not manually. If I can do it manually, then I will change it to 1453 as the beginning date, but as far as I'm aware, I can't do it. So we've got a slight overlap, and I'm going to treat that as just, this is us in future looking back at the history of this particular timeline. So I'm going to treat that overlap as if it was just the history books not having a complete record of the time. Because it's the easiest solution. Solves all of the problems. Means that we don't have to worry about Germany not existing, although there is a slight issue with the fact that we now don't have an heir, but nobody else does either, so that's okay too, I guess. Oh no, they do. Do you? No, you don't. You're a republic, so you don't count. Okay, so most of the nations don't have an heir. Apparently only these guys do. Okay, whatever. And there's a Timurid as the heir to the Timurids. That's nice. I might have to change them to Tengri, because I think they were Tengri in our game. I think they converted in CK2, but perhaps not. If they didn't, they've got a slight problem, because a lot of this land is Tengri. If I recall correctly, it was when they took it. That could be an interesting game, seeing what happens to the Timurids. So those were the changes I made to idea groups. I changed the names of heirs. I'll just load it up. Oh, I think I chose to play as the Timurids. Yes, I did. Well, actually, that's okay. We'll have a quick look at the Timurids, and then I'll manually change over using the tags. So, if I can remember what they are. So let's see, what is the Timurid religious unity? 36%, good god, they have a lot of people who are Tengri here. I didn't realize that would be such a big thing. Oh, I see, because they've got a lot of Sunnis as well. Interesting. Interesting. I think it's just... Yes, there we go. To switch, you just have to type in tag ROM to, well, tag and then whatever the abbreviation is for the country you want to play as. Okay, so, as I said, I was waiting for the Art of War to be released because you can now mothball fleets. Where is it? There it is. You can mothball fleets. That is a massively cool thing. Actually, you know what? Just look at the Art of War's release notes to see how much cool stuff they added. So you can now have client states, you can have marches, and I'm thinking that will be useful for approaching the end of the game because we'll want to make ourselves not quite as overpowered as we were at the beginning to make Victoria 2 interesting, I think. So I changed the names of heirs, I think. To do that, you just go add heir. Oops, helps if I spell it right. Rom? Yes, there we go. So Tiberius is now a name in there. I hate that. Trajan, I thought that would be, you know, a decent name. I've thrown some interesting ones in there too. Tiberius again, I must have weighted his name really high. Constantine, I think that's a good one. William, because there were a lot of Williams in our history and we have to maintain our Norman heritage. I did include a couple of German names as well. There's an Emma in there for our one empress who did quite well. I might add a couple of German names like Conrad and that sort of thing to show the unification of French and German. But as you can see, there's a lot of names for us. And Anastasia is there as well. I did keep some of the original Roman names, but they're all very Greek. And I threw in a couple of funny ones. I thought that this would be, you know, kind of appropriate to have a Jean-Luc, Emperor Jean-Luc. I think I threw in a, I threw in something else. Hans or Karl? I can't remember exactly what it was. But as you can see, I've thrown in a lot of new names so we could have some interesting heirs and we could reflect on the culture of our empire. And I also changed the leader names for armies and such. Navies, yes, create one. So there's some very French names, there's some very Roman names, there's even some Greek names. It's a nice little blend. So I'm hoping that that will add to the flavor of the game. Now, of the game itself, as I said, we're going to mostly roleplay it as far as we can, and in that effort, I've decided that I'm not going to play as the HRE, although we could have assigned the HRE to the Roman tag, and then we could have had electors, but we were very firmly primogenitor at the end of the game, and I don't think that suddenly switching to an elective government would be the greatest. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make the game more interactive. So you guys are going to play the local nobility. You are going to be part of the game. So I'm going to record a session at a time, and at the end of each session, there's going to be a decision for you guys to make in regards to policy. So you guys will get to help me decide the course of the Roman Empire, and then when you've told me what you want, I'll record the next session, etc, etc. Of course, this does require feedback from you guys, so if you're not really into it, I'm just going to end up playing how I would roleplay it. So it's up to you. You guys can be more interactive with me in this one, or you can sit back and enjoy the ride through a Paradox mega campaign. It is up to you. But I did take that idea from, and I suppose it worked better for a screenshot LP, but there's a magnificent LP by one of the Paradox devs who did it before he became a Paradox dev. And his name is Wiz, and he did a fantastic LP playing as Swabia from the beginning of Crusader Kings. This is the original Crusader Kings, through EU3, and then Victoria, and then Hearts of Iron 2. So it's a fairly old LP, but it's still amazing, and I highly recommend you look it up. But he had a thing in EU3 where he called it the Reichstag, so the viewers of the LP could contribute to how the LP was run. So I plan to do the same sort of thing. If you guys want to be involved, you can be involved. You get to be local nobility. I tried to add names to custom armies in here, but apparently Art of War and adding custom names in the country description box doesn't really work so well, so I'm just going to have to do that manually. But if you can think of any cool Legion names, feel free to add them in as well. And I think that's about it. Yeah, I think I've covered about everything. We're going to roleplay this game. We're going to lead the Roman Empire under the House to Hardcore to glorious victory, and we're going to see which one of these countries, Timurids, Volga Bulgaria, or Poland, comes out of this on top, because it could go to either of them, you know, to any of these three, and the winner will probably end up forming Russia, which could be, that could be a plot twist. Massive Russia up here, Roman Empire down here, maybe a unified China over this way. The possibilities are endless, and that's why I love Paradox games. Oh, that's what I meant to say. On the subject of personal unions, I will not actively seek them out. I will probably have royal marriages with countries that share our current monarchs. So I'll probably have a royal marriage with Denmark, I'll probably have a royal marriage with Sweden, but I will not be actively seeking out personal unions. If we get a personal union with them and they are integrated at some point, fantastic. If not, no big deal. I think that's finally everything. I think I've finally covered absolutely everything I had to say about the game and the conversion and the state of affairs. If I left anything out, I'll add it to the end of the video, but as I've said, you guys are welcome to help me in forming the world of this particular Europa Universalis 4. So leave comments about what you want to see me do, ideas on how to make the game more interesting, thoughts on balancing stuff out, because I'm not going to start this game for a little bit. I do want to finish off a couple of other projects first, but seeing as Paradox games are ridiculously easy to mod in most cases, I've been spending a bit of time making sure that everything here was all set up, so that's... yeah, I think that's finally everything. So you guys let me know what you think, how balance can be improved, goals, all that fun stuff, especially ideas for Volga Bulgaria. Can't stress that enough. I don't really know much about the history of Volga Bulgaria, except that it wasn't really all that relevant. It didn't survive that long, all things considered, so, you know, there's not really all that much for me to draw from when thinking up ideas. So, if you guys have stuff to add, message it. Make sure it gets added in, because the only way I can make this game fun for both you and I together, you as a group of viewers and me as the LPer, is for us to work together to make it fun and interesting. So, I think that is finally, absolutely, positively everything. And I will see you guys in the next episode, whatever LP it happens to be that you're watching, and eventually I will see you back when we continue the saga of the House to Hardcore, with me, Grey Hunter. Toodaloo.